If you want to support me on Patreon, click the element on the end screen. Hey guys, what's up? This is Tyler from Animator Kid. I recently watched Deadpool 2, and as in recently, I mean a few weeks ago when it came out on digital. I really enjoyed it, although I thought some of the jokes were derivative.
Isn't that a little derivative?
You're absolutely right.
Overall though, I thought it was really well directed, had great action sequences, fascinating character development, and had a better grasp on the genre than its predecessor. I also thought Cable's character was well executed, with Josh Brolin delivering yet another solid MCU performance. But besides a few jokes that didn't land well, in addition to TJ Miller's entire presence,
that word, selfless, I literally don't know what that means.
There is one aspect of the film that continues to bother me: the time travel. In a nutshell, it just makes no damn sense. The mechanics are sloppy, and when they are explained, the rules seem to shift a few scenes later. Essentially, the time travel in Deadpool 2 is downright incoherent. But does it have to be? That's the question I want to answer here. This is Deadpool 2's Time Travel Explained. Now, of course, the explanations presented in this video are entirely theoretical. There's absolutely no guarantee that my reasoning was shared by the filmmakers. In fact, Deadpool 2 director David Leitch basically confirmed in an interview that priority was not given to exploring how Cable's time travel actually works. Makes sense for narrative purposes, but I'm here to tell you, there is an explanation, at least a possible one. First, let's establish some background before we delve deep into how the time travel in this film functions. We formally meet Cable towards the beginning of the second act. We see that he comes from a dystopian future, where he has been trained as a soldier. After his wife and daughter are killed by an adult Russell Collins, aka Fire Fist, Cable travels back in time to kill Russell before he can cause more harm. Already, we run into our first indication as to how the film's time travel works. Traditionally, in science fiction, there have been three major types of backwards time travel. The first involves parallel universes with different points of divergence. The second involves a singular timeline that can be overwritten. And the third involves a predestination paradox, or time loop. The method of time travel involving parallel universes is the one given the most serious consideration in theoretical physics. Because our current understanding of the universe prevents backwards time travel in the classical sense, this explanation provides that all travelers to the past actually arrive in separate quantum realities that have minimal interaction with each other. Think the alternate reality in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot. The second method does not discount the existence of parallel universes, but also does not use them to explain time travel events. In this scenario, time travel to the past can often have catastrophic consequences if handled irresponsibly. Those who intervene can actually overwrite their futures and erase what came before. The third method is often employed as a means to indicate the future can't be changed, or conveys attempts to prevent it from being changed. We see multiple examples of this in Star Trek, such as the DS9 episode Trials and Tribulations, and may also explain the time loops generated by the Time Stone in Doctor Strange. Based on what we see in Deadpool 2, Cable seems to be employing the second method. By traveling to the past to change the course of history, we see that the timeline can be overwritten and cause a ripple effect that changes the future. This is illustrated by the blood on Hope's teddy bear disappearing after the team helps put Russell on a different life path. But as many have pointed out, this still begs the question: how come Cable is still there after he changes the future? How come the entire film still happens in the first place? We know that parallel universes aren't directly involved since the teddy bear changes appearance, and we know a predestination paradox isn't at play since that invalidates the entire point of the mission. I've been grappling with these issues ever since I saw the film for the first time. Even after I started writing the script, I still wasn't sure how I was going to approach this. I mean, it really doesn't make sense on first watch and can honestly be distracting from an otherwise entertaining story. That and all the on-screen civilian deaths that propel the plot. In fact, it's no surprise that the writers paid little attention to resolving this paradox, since its implications go well beyond the purposes of telling the story. However, upon reviewing the events in the film not twice but 3 times, I believe I've finally figured it out. That's right, there is an explanation, and it is coherent. This explanation is by no means simple and requires a rather inductive approach, working backwards from the conclusion that we know to be true. That being said, I do think this theory provides some answers to people who've been trying to make sense of how this film treats time travel. First of all, we have to acknowledge that there are actually 2 forms of travel to the past that Cable employs. Not only does he transport his physical self to 2018 to kill Russell, but he uses his second charge to transport his consciousness to his body several minutes in the past to save Deadpool's life. There is precedent for this mental form of time travel, specifically in X-Men Days of Future Past, wherein Wolverine's consciousness is sent back 50 years to erase the Sentinel program from existence. The physics involved in this process are implemented in Cable's time travel device, which seems to be able to differentiate between physical and mental transportation. In the post-credits scene of Deadpool 2, Deadpool uses a modified version of the device to make changes of his own. He saves the lives of both Vanessa and Peter before killing his counterpart from X-Men Origins Wolverine, and Ryan Reynolds before he can accept his role in Green Lantern. While the last two segments are mostly played for laughs, Deadpool 2's writers confirmed in a Reddit AMA that Vanessa and Peter's returns are canon. Many an article has pointed out how this could potentially undermine the entire plot of the film, since Vanessa's death provides the basis for Wade Wilson's motivation. But as others have speculated, the events of the film could still occur with Vanessa still alive. The fact that we see the X-Force being formed proves this to be true. The writers do, however, indicate that Cable's time travel device won't be used as a crutch in future films. But this still doesn't address how Hope's teddy bear changes appearance without Cable changing too. Don't worry, that's what I'm going to talk about right now. When Cable uses his first charge, he clearly travels via the fourth dimension to a point earlier in his own timeline, which is how he's able to effect change in the first place. Once Russell's first murder is stopped, the teddy bear indicates that Cable's family is alive again. If a parallel universe were involved, the bear likely wouldn't change at all. As for how Cable himself is still present despite making these changes, think of it this way. As a conscious being that can alter the timeline, he has to be present in either one of two places, his future or the year he travels to. Under the rules established in the film, duplicates of individuals don't seem to be present at the same time, as that would constitute a paradox. This paradox is precisely why Cable is still present at the end of the movie. Having used his final charge, he solidifies his existence in the past, while the future is changed. If preventing Russell from becoming a murderer resulted in Cable's mission being erased, then the plan wouldn't have worked. Russell would still become a serial killer, and the entire arc of the film would be undermined, again. The teddy bear changes appearance because in the future from which it now originates, Cable's daughter is never killed. This points to the likelihood that the very nature of organic matter, for example sentient beings, is categorically different from inorganic matter when it comes to time travel. This is a concept heavily featured in the Terminator franchise, and this isn't Deadpool 2's only reference to Terminator.
Hands off that kid, John Connor!
Additionally, since Cable's intervention in Russell's life becomes integral to the existence of the new timeline, his travel to the past does constitute a predestination paradox. If Cable isn't right here, right now, the entire history of the universe is fundamentally altered. We can also infer that the other events in the film, before the post-credits scene, still happen in a similar fashion, since everyone else on the team retains their memories, and Deadpool points out that the teddy bear has turned clean. The events leading up to the timeline alteration are still there, or else they wouldn't have been able to occur in the first place. This is one of the consequences of working with a singular timeline that can be overwritten, as paradoxes such as this will inevitably rise. Although we don't exactly see what happens with Cable in this new future, we know that he's sticking around for the time being to prevent the world from destroying itself. Since Cable can't create new memories simultaneously in both the past and future, he has to remain in the past until he decides to travel forward in time. His new future counterpart likely disappears temporarily to prevent a paradox, much like how Walter Bishop disappears in the series finale of Fringe after he travels to 2167. Of course, Cable could have disappeared from the present after stopping Russell's murder, much like Peter at the end of Fringe's third season, and the team would still retain their memories of him. But to put it bluntly, that's just not what we see on screen. It's possible that this is exactly what happened in a parallel universe, and what we see is just one quantum possibility.
Did you guys just put the word quantum in front of everything?
But going down that rabbit hole would only make this video more complicated than it already is. Now that Cable's device can use multiple charges, he can theoretically return to the future anytime he wants and continue his life as if it were uninterrupted, even though we know it wasn't. This concept will likely be explored in future X-Men films, as Josh Brolin's contract features 3 more appearances of the character. So to recap, Hope's teddy bear changes appearance because Hope's death is prevented, but Cable's mission is preserved in the timeline because without it, the teddy bear would still look the same and Cable's family would still be dead. Cable himself cannot exist simultaneously in both the past and future, so he's relegated to the past until he decides to return home, where his family will have been saved. Sound confusing? It does to me as well, but I think that it explains what's going on in Deadpool 2. Time travel as a storytelling device has always been used differently depending on what's called for, and its liberal use in Deadpool 2 is just one iteration of the technology we see on screen. Cable's device has more powers than meets the eye. It can travel through dimensions, but also between universes, as seen in the post-credits sequence. But its powers, much like that of the Time Stone in the MCU, are limited by rules that the writers established for the purposes of the story.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Not so fast, Wade Wilson. Not so fast. This is my first video essay exploring a Marvel-related property, at least as far as I can remember. I'd like to do more, although as of now, I'm not sure what to explore. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to leave a like and comment what you'd like to see next. I just might make this part of a series discussing various elements of the MCU and associated films. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to receive notifications whenever I upload. As I stated at the beginning of this video, if you want to support me on Patreon, follow the link on the end screen or in the description. I'll have a Star Trek related video coming in December, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to be awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.
You remind me of my wife.
I'm sorry?
I said you remind me.
No, I'm sorry
of
that
my
you
wife.
said that while making heavy eye contact and applying lip balm.